Institutional corrections. What is institutional corrections? Refers to those persons housed in secure correctional facilities. Example is jail, and jail is defined as a place of confinement for inmates under investigation or undergoing trial or serving short-term sentences. Cold name the term of jail. Correction is that branch of the administration of criminal justice system charged with the responsibility for the custody, supervision, and rehabilitation of the convicted offender. Penology, from the Greek words pol, which means punishment, and logos course or study of crime prevention. Prison, reformatory management and correction of criminals. Penology is the branch of criminology which deals with the management and admonition of inmates. Punishment. Punishment is defined as the redress that the state takes against an offending member. It is inflicted by the group in corporate capacity in one who is regarded as a member of the same group. Origin and history of punishment. The oldest written penal law that stopped the ancient practice of retribution of personal vengeance and punishment become the responsibility of the state. This law is known as the Code of Hammurabi, which King Hammurabi of Savian promulgated. Punishment in primitive society. The most common punishment are death, physical torture, mutilation, branding, public humiliation, fines, forfeiture of property, banishment, and later on transportation and imprisonment, but each of these punishment has had forms. Thus, death has been accomplished by flaying, crucifixion, beheading, impaling, drowning and burning. Physical torture are executed by flogging, dismemberment, and starvation, public humiliation, stocks, pillory, docking, stools, branding and branks, and later imprisonment by confinement in dungeons, galleys, hulks, jails, house of corrections, workhouses, and penitentiaries. Redress of a wrong act. Retaliation, personal vengeance. The earliest remedy for wrong act to anyone in the primitive society. The concept of personal revenge by the victim's family or tribe against the family or tribe of the offender. Hence blood feuds was accepted in the early primitive societies. Fines and punishment. Customs has exerted effort and great force among primitive societies. The acceptance of vengeance in the form of payment, cattle, food, personal services, etc. became accepted as dictated by tribal traditions. As tribal leaders, elders, and later kings became into power, they began to exert their authority on fee negotiations. Wrongdoers could choose to stay away from the proceedings trial by ordeal, but if they refuse to abide by law imposed, they will be declared to be an outlaw. Ancient form of punishment. A. Death penalty. This was effected by burning, boiling in oil, breaking at the wheel, drowning, hanging, etc. B. Physical torture. This was the so-called corporal punishment, which was effected by mutilation, maiming, whipping, etc. C. Social degradation. The purpose of this was to put the offender to shame or humiliation. This was effected by branding, use of ducking stool, stocks, pillory, etc. 1. D. Banishment. This the sending or putting away of an offender, which was carried out either by a prohibition against coming into a specified territory or a prohibition against going outside a specified territory, such as an island tow where the offender has been removed. C. Other similar forms of punishment like transportation and slavery. Contemporary forms of punishment. A. Imprisonment. Putting offenders in a prison for the purpose of protecting the public and at the same time rehabilitating them by undergoing institutional treatment programs. B. Parole is defined as a procedure by which prisoners are selected for release on the basis of individuals' phones and progress within the correctional institution and a service by which they are provided with necessary guidance as they serve the remainder of their sentence in the free community. C. Probation. It is a procedure under which a defendant found guilty of a crime is released by the court without imprisonment, subject to the condition imposed by the court and subject to the supervision of the probation officer. D. Fine. An amount given as a compensation for a criminal act. E. Desterro. the penalty of banishing a person from the place where he committed a crime, prohibiting him to get near or enter the 25-kilometer perimeter. Justification of punishment. A. Retribution. Punishment of an offender was carried out in the form of personal vengeance. Since retaliatory acts result in the infliction of greater injury, the retaliation was later limited to the degree of injury inflicted, giving rise to an eye for an eye philosophy. B. Expiation or atonement. This was in the form of group vengeance, as distinguished from retribution, where punishment is exacted publicly for the purpose of appeasing the social group. Punishing the offender gives the community a sense of its moral superiority, assurance that virtue is regarded after all. C. Deterrence of exemplarity. Punishment gives lesson to the offender by showing to others what would happen to them if they violate the law. D. Protection. By placing offenders in prison, society is protected from the further criminal depredation of criminals. E. Reformation. Society's interest can be best served by helping the prisoner become a law-abiding citizen and productive upon his return to the community by requiring him to undergo an intensive program of rehabilitation. School of Penology. 1. Classical school. Among its proponents included Beccaria, Rousseau, Montesquieu and Voltaire, maintained the doctrine of psychological hedonism, that the individual calculates pleasures and pains in advance of action and regulates his conduct by results of his calculations. Hedonistic calculus formulated by Betham, a great reformer of criminal law, worked out on precise mathematical laws for the infliction of punishment. 2. Neoclassical school arose at the time of the French Revolution, maintained that while the classical doctrine was correct in general, it should be modified in certain details. Since children and lunatics cannot calculate pleasures and pain, they should not be regarded as criminals or be punished. 3. Positive school denied individual responsibility and reflected an essentially non-punitive reaction to crime and criminality. Since the criminal was held to be not responsible for his acts, he was not be punished. Correctional system. The function of correction serves to rehabilitate and neutralize the deviant behavior of adult criminals and juvenile delinquents. This component of the criminal justice system faces a three-side task in carrying out the punishment imposed on the convicted offender by the court to deter, to inflict retribution, and rehabilitate. The components of their correction effectuate their functions through different programs: probation, commitment to an institution, and parole. Evolution of corrections. Code of Hammurabi 1750 BC. The first formal law dealing with the concept of justice as lex talionis, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Mosaic law allowed extreme punishments such as flogging or burning alive. Offenders are entitled to freedom from torture, and admission of guilt is admissible only when there is a confirmatory testimony from at least one witness. King Enemu's Code decreed the imposition of restitution and fines of execution, mutilation, or other savage penalties. It holds the principle that offender can be punished and victims can be paid by making the offender reimburse the value of whatever damages as the result of crime. Nicodemus Ethics, written in 400 BC, first publication that explains crime and corrective justice, stating that punishment is a mean of restoring the balance between pleasure and pain. 509 BC, a law was passed prohibiting flogging or execution, unless affirmed by the Centuriate Assembly. Underground cisterns, a form of prison used to detain offenders undergoing trial in some cases and to hold sentences offenders where they were to be starved to death. Agastulum, Roman prison that was used to confine slaves where they were attached to workbenches and forced to do hard labor in the period of their imprisonment. Justinian Code. Roman Emperor Justin put this code into law in 529 AD and became the standard law in all the areas occupied by the Roman Empire, particularly Europe. This code was a revision of the 12 tables of Roman law that originated at about 500 BC, stating every crime and penalties for every offense listed. Burgundian Code that introduced the concept of restitution, but punishment was meted according to the social class of the offenders. Offender had to pay the specified value in order not to undergo physical sufferings as penalty. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching.